Okay, this will be the lecture 3 for chapter 10, and this will look at now monetary policy in quite more detail. Before we get to the monetary policy and the tools of the Federal Reserve, we first have to talk a bit about the demand for money, because this is going to be used to look at the change in interest rates, which is what the Federal Reserve is trying to do with its monetary policy. And so we'll look at the demand for money. Now, the demand for money really is how much of your wealth do you want to hold in the form of money. You can put your wealth into the stock market, you can put it into real estate, you can put it into corporate bonds, you can put it into bank accounts, and so forth. So the benefit of holding onto money is that it's liquidity. Remember, that means you can convert money into purchasing power pretty fast, and that is nice to have. If you have a good buy, say you dabble in antiques, you like to have quite a bit of cash on hand for liquidity so you can make purchases when you find those bargains, and so forth. If you're a small investor, you might want to hold money in, or your wealth in more in liquid form money, so maybe you can buy some shares of stock if you get some good tips or things like that. Now, the downside of holding your wealth in the form of money is the foregone return. So if it's not in the stock market, you're not getting dividends, you're not getting capital gains. If it's not in corporate bonds or government bonds, you're not getting interest. And so we'll look at the main cost of holding money as the foregone interest. So now, why would people hold money? Well, they hold money for 3 reasons. One is to conduct transactions. So I put my check I get from Chaffey College, I put that into my checking account. And I use that to spend money during the month, to pay my bills, to buy groceries. We also hold on to money for a case of a rainy day for precautionary reasons. Experts say you should have maybe 2 to 3 months of your salary saved up in case you lose your job. You might have to repair your car. You might be out for an illness, and therefore you want to have some money set aside just in case of things that happen. Now, both these things are really not related to the rate of interest. We have to hold money for paying our bills, so interest rate doesn't really affect that at all. If it's 10% or 1%, I still got to pay the mortgage. And also, I'm not going to not save money for emergencies based on rates being really low. Now, the one area that does affect how much you loan is for money for speculative reasons. This is where you maybe bet on the stock market, you may be more conservative, you might put it into corporate bonds, which still you can lose money on if the corporation goes bankrupt. So people who hold money for this reasons, you might want to hold on to cash if you think rates are going to go up in the future. So you don't want to buy that corporate bond today if rates are really low, and if you think rates are going to be higher in the future, or if you think the stock market's not going to do so well right now, you might want to put your your wealth in the form of money, keep it in, say, a bank account, maybe a checking account, and therefore not go out there and purchase those assets. So down here, we have a graph for demand for money. So high rates of interest, you'd find that it's costing you more for not keeping your wealth in, say, corporate bonds, things like that. And so you'd hold less money at high rates of interest. And all things being equal, if the rate of interest is really low, like it is right now, people tend to hold more of the wealth in the form of money for liquidity. In anticipation of, say, maybe corporate bonds paying higher rates maybe next year than they are right now. For example, I probably don't want to buy a 30-year Treasury bond right now because they're paying less than 1%. So I might want to put more money into, say, my savings account and wait for the rates on U.S. Treasuries to go higher in the future. So again, all things being equal, high rates of interest, we hold more of our wealth in non-monetary forms, interest-paying assets. And low rates of interest, we hold more of our wealth in monetary forms, maybe savings accounts, checking accounts. Well, right now, the rates are so low, I usually I'm very careful moving money from checking account to, say, a savings account, but my savings account is paying me, 0.0 something, whatever. So, I just leave it in my checking account. And in our model of the money market, we're going to assume that the supply of money is set by the Fed, so they decide where the supply of money is going to be, and that's just going to be just a vertical line and not related to the rate of interest. Now, before we talk about the money market, I have to talk a bit about bond prices and interest rates. The thing is that if more money is created, then a lot of that money will flow into the bond market, and that would cause the demand for bonds to go up, which could increase the price of bonds. So see what happens when the price of bonds go up. Now in chapter 14, your book talks about more complex type of bonds where they pay a coupon interest rate or coupon interest, and that's when those like long-term bonds that would pay a bit of interest each year, and that gets more complicated to get the price. I'm going to deal with very simple bonds, and my bonds are going to be a one-year bond that has a face value of $1,000. The face value is what you're going to get when the bond matures. So the deal is you buy a bond today for X number of dollars, and in 1 year, you're going to get $1,000. Now the question is, how much would you pay for that bond? And you might think, why would you pay $1,000 for that bond? And the answer is no, that doesn't make any sense. Why would you pay $1,000 now to get $1,000 back in a year? You're going to pay what's called a discount. You're going to pay less than $1,000. Exactly how much you pay is based on what the market says the rate's going to be. So if there's a high demand for these bonds, people will be paying, and if there's a low demand for the bonds, people would be paying less. So let's say, for argument's sake, that the current price of the bond is, say, $900. So the deal is you pay $100 today, and you get $1,000 back at the end of the year. So your return, your interest you earn is $100 right there. Now it's not 10% because you didn't give them $1,000, you gave them $900. So we want to see what 100 is based on a $900 purchase price. Essentially, it's like putting $900 into your savings account today, and at the end of the year you have $1,000 in there. So you made a $100 return on a $900 financial investment. Well, $100 divided by 900 times 100 to get the percent gives you 11.1%. Now let's say the bonds are more attractive. People have less alternatives out there. Maybe the stock market is kind of scary. Whenever the stock market is going down, people pull their money out and they put the money into bonds, and that would cause the price of bonds to go up. So when the price of bonds go up, what happens to the interest rates? Well, two things happen in the equation. First of all, you're going to get less interest. If you pay more, you get $50 return, no longer $100. And also, you have to give them more money now. So two things would cause the rate to go down. You would have a lower number in the numerator and a higher number in the denominator. So now 50 divided by 950 gives us a return of 5.3%. So know that whenever the price of bonds increase, that means interest rates have gone down. So if you listen to the news and they report bond prices are up, you know automatically that interest rates are down. If bond prices go down, then you know automatically that rates are higher. So now let's go down to our market here, and let's put the supply in. And say the supply is right here. And again, the Fed sets a supply. So that'd be the money supply. Money supply 1. And let's say the Fed increases the money supply, and we'll see how they do that later on in this lecture. So supply of money increases, they increase the supply of money to money supply 2. Well, rates went down. Interest rates used to be here, and now they're here. Let's say that the rate here was, say, 7%, and now it's down to maybe, 5%. And that's what happens when the supply of money increases, we get lower interest rates. Money supply increases. That would increase the demand for bonds as more money is in the market for bonds. That would drive up the price of bonds. Which is what interest rates? Drives them down, right? So the price of bonds go up. It goes from our, say, a $900 bond, $950, and the rates go down. do something with my cat. Be right back. Okay, so down here, to summarize, the supply of money would increase. That would give us a surplus of money, which is right here actually. That would find its way into bonds, not all of it, but some will. And demand for bonds increases, which would drive up the price of bonds. And that's going to cause interest rates to go down. And why would the Fed want to do that? Well, if rates come down, that's going to cause aggregate expenditures to increase, at least in theory. Lower rates of interest will make it easier for corporations to borrow money, to put money into investment, to expand their businesses, to have new construction, buy equipment. Also, low rates of interest, all things being equal, would have consumers borrow more money to, say, purchase items, buy cars, buy homes, things like that. Next, what happens if the supply of money decreases? Gotta change that. And I'll be back for part 2.